Hi, this is Ian Berry, and thank you for joining us once again on a Candid conversation. This is a series this year, a very special series that I'm doing on the 7 things that I believe you need to be remarkable in your business if you're to thrive on the challenges of change. And my special guest today is Gihan Perera. Welcome, Gihan.
Thanks, Ian.
Gihan is going to help us explore today one of those special 7 areas, and that's the topic of differentiation. And I'm very much looking forward to having this conversation with you, Gihan, because I've known you for at least 15 years, and one of the things I admire about your work is that you're often taking the contrarian view, the different view. And you've very much been able to differentiate yourself, and hence having you as a guest today. One of the things that I'm fascinated when I look at your work, Gihan, you talk a lot about the world being fast and flat and free, and you also have what I think is a very interesting motto, which is "I matter." And I'm fascinated in a world where, collaboration is a key. You're talking about the individual. But I thought we'd start our conversation about differentiation today with what is this idea of yours of the fast, flat and free world?
And it's a great place to start, Ian. So thank you for starting with that, because actually I think those two things work together. So fast, flat and free is what's happened to the world.
Yes.
And I matter is what you need to do about it. So they really link in very closely together. So if you look at, in fact, I would say in a nutshell, the whole concept of I matter is that leadership used to be about control, it used to be about hierarchy, it used to be about structure, and now it's about influence. So we've changed from a world of control to a world of influence. And what's changed is that the world's become fast, flat, and free. And if you, the 2 big things that have happened are computers and the internet. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a business, an organization that deals with that in a big way. You don't need to be a technology company. You don't need to work in that space. Obviously, computers and the internet have changed everybody. And I don't want to just make it sound so glib, Ian. I think that the key is there's 2 things. That computers have meant that things have gone from physical to digital. And the internet has meant that we've gone from isolated to connected. And those 2 things combined give us those 3 things, so fast, flat, and free. So things are now faster than ever before. We want things instantly. The flat part is that the world is flat. So we've flattened hierarchies, we've flattened structures, we've flattened the barriers between people and countries. And of course, now that things are digital, they're available free or sometimes for a very low cost. So those 3 things, that the world has become fast, flat, and free, have helped to transform almost everything. It's transformed the way that we communicate. It's obviously transformed the way that technology works, but that affects everything. And that's our fast, flat, and free world that we're living in.
Yes.
And as a result of that, we now need to we can't rely on those old structures that used to work, those old control structures. We now need to work through influence.
Well, I think that's a fascinating way to start. And one of the things that I immediately was thinking as you were speaking there was really what you're saying. One way of looking at this, what you're saying is that so much has become the same, in fact. And therefore,
exactly right.
And therefore it's much harder to differentiate.
Yeah, that's right, Ian. I think there was not so long ago, if you're in a business, if you're an organization, I think this is especially true in Australia, we've become a bit complacent, that we're isolated. So organizations and businesses had the luxury to be able to do whatever they wanted.
Yes.
And you could differentiate by just simply being there. Because customers didn't have access to many choices. Customers didn't have access to a global market in many places.
Yes.
Organizations, employees didn't have many choices about how to find where they were going to work. If you're going on a holiday, there weren't many places where you could find information about that. You'd look up newspapers where they would have, or travel magazines, or you'd walk into a travel agency. If you were looking to go to a new restaurant, even something as simple as that, Ian, you know that there weren't many choices. You could either look locally, you could ask your friends, a small group of friends,
Yes.
or you could. Now there's so many options available, and many of them are similar to or better than what your business, your organization is offering. So you're exactly right. We're drowning in a sea of sameness, and we need to be different.
So I'm fascinated, therefore, what was the process? How did you come up with I Matter?
Yeah, look, the whole I Matter thing is, as many of these things, Ian, as you'd know, working with leaders and helping them find their unique leadership position, it's something that's taken time. And for me, it was actually a case of looking back over time and looking at all the things that I did and seeing what common thread ran through them. And one of my mentors for many years is somebody you know quite well as well, Ian, Mac Church.
Yes,
And
yes, indeed.
we were looking at what I was doing and looking at, okay, what's a common thread? What unites and binds everything that I do? And it seemed like everything that I was doing was about the individual.
Yes.
I was that Fast, Flat and Free is about how individual businesses need to take advantage of the changing world. I wrote a book called Out of Office, which is about how individuals can work from home, or maybe even give up their business or work employment altogether and start a business running from home. I've done a lot of work with thought leaders, as you know, Ian, and I run this membership program called the E-Gurus community, which is all about smart individuals and smart thought leaders making a difference in the world. So all of this kind of led to that, that the idea that everything I'm about is about the individual. I actually remember my very first job, which was, it was a long time ago, Ian, in 1989. I was working for a small software company in Perth. And I was lucky that I was in a small company. And in Perth, like the big companies weren't in Perth, they were in the eastern states, and I didn't want to travel. I just wanted to get a job and see what the workforce was like.
Yes.
So I was working for this tiny little company, just 20 people. And I actually remember one time the general manager, there were two managing directors, and at the time I'd probably been working there for about 2 or 3 years. And this managing director, he wasn't my boss, but he was my boss's boss. I remember one time we were working on this mining project because we used to create software to manage mining equipment up in the northwest of Western Australia. And my boss was away and my boss's boss was away. And it wasn't like there was a huge hierarchy, but I was kind of so this technical director, Danny Schofield, he came to me one day and he said, look, we've got a problem with this project. Can you log in? So you dial in using these dial-in modems. Can you log in? Just have a look what's going on. This is what the customers reported. Just get back to me and just tell me what we should do. And so I had a look, and a couple of hours later, I went into Danny's office, and he wasn't there. So I did what we used to do in those days, which was write up a little memo, print it out, and stick it in his in tray, like a physical in tray. Yes. I said, look, here, Danny, here's what we have to do. Here's what I've looked at, and here are my recommendations. And left it there. And then I went up for lunch.
This is 99, right? 1999?
Yeah, actually earlier than that, I think late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, so this is really pre-internet.
Well, yeah, I mean, there wasn't internet, but it was very academic and military. So most businesses didn't use it yet. So we didn't have email in the office, and it was easy enough to just walk across to his office. But after lunch, Danny, he buzzed me on our little intercom and said, "Oh, can you come into the office?" Yes. So I went in, and he had my memo in his hand, and he said, "Look, can you take this memo and reprint it, but take off the Dear Danny at the top, and we'll put the customer's name, and I'll sign it at the bottom, and we'll send it off to him. We'll send it off to them." And I said, "Look, are you sure? Because, are you sure you're happy to do that?" And he said, "Yeah, look, you're the most qualified person in the office right now to make a recommendation, and I'm willing to stand by that recommendation." And it really taught me a lot, Ian, because it taught me that, if you like I matter. And it was working in that small software company, having a boss and a boss's boss who were willing to say, "Look, you are the absolute expert, even though you're wet behind the ears, 2 years out of university. There's nobody else here who's more qualified than you, so we'll stand by you." And Danny Schofield and Kevin Scar, my boss, Steve Pritchard, they were well ahead of their time in embracing this idea that there are individuals in your organization who know stuff, and you trust their judgment and trust their expertise and stand by it. And that's exactly what's happened now. And I think that's those days, those early days working for Comsys, a company that doesn't exist anymore, it really set me on the path of understanding the power of the individual and why everyone should be looking at the people in your organization who say, I matter.
And it kind of struck me as you were sharing that story that so the seeds of differentiation can go back a long way.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, people are trying to create value propositions in a weekend kind of thing that you hear about. People are trying to get slogans, mottos, what have you. But what you're suggesting, I think, is that the seeds of how we really make a difference in a way that is deep and personal for us, the seeds go back a long way.
Yeah, and that's right, Ian. And I think those things like mottos and slogans and value propositions, I think they have their place. So I don't think we can say they're no use at all. But to me, they're a starting point for a conversation. And it's, again, in the way that they used to be used was, again, very much that control. So an organization would say, here's our slogan, here's our value proposition, here's our mission, here's what we stand for.
Yes.
Now, everybody who comes and works for the organization, this is what you're expected to fit into. So these are the pigeonholes where we fit, and these are the services that we offer. But how can you do that when in an organization where there are smart, talented, innovative people who come in with their own ideas, their own values? They're already successful outside the organization. They already have a burning desire to do something in the world. And sometimes they're already doing it because they've got the ability to do that now. And now they're coming into your organization, and you're going to say to them, no, you have to fit within these parameters, this value proposition, this pigeonhole. So I think the old way of creating value propositions was exactly as you said, let's go away on a strategic retreat to Bali and come back with these stone tablets that tell us how the organization is going to work for the next 5 years. Well, that doesn't work anymore.
No.
It probably never did, but more than ever before, that's not going to work. If you want to create values for your organization and value propositions, I know they're different things, but if you want to create them, then engage your people in it. Get everyone involved in it. Get them to say, here's the sort of organization I want to work for. Here's the sort of thing that will make me proud to say I work here. Here's what will make my work meaningful, so that I come here for meaning, not just for money. Those are the sort of things that will create a value proposition and a culture where people actually get the chance to shine.
Interesting you say that, and that's the kind of work that I do, and it came really about from an error that I made probably 20 years ago, where I was one of these consultants taking away people for the weekend to get the mission, vision, and values until I got a rude shock from some employees of that organisation who didn't think that was the way to go, and I stopped doing that a very long time ago. And it struck me, I've heard, I forget the exact saying, but it's something along the lines of differentiation is actually about the difference we make in the hearts and minds of our employees first and our customers second. And so maybe we could sort of explore that. It's kind of differentiation, first of all, is the difference we make to our employees, and then it's, like you're saying, it's how together we make a difference in the hearts and minds of our customers. That's differentiation. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, no, let me think about it, Ian, because I think you're right. I think that's the difference, isn't it? So if you say we've got these differentiators and you say I'm different than somebody else because of this, who cares? Who cares unless it's a difference that makes a difference? And I think that's the difference. So I remember when I first started my business, one of the books that I read was Neil Rackham's book, Spin Selling. And it's a fantastic book. And I think he talks about, he's talking about sales.
Yes.
And every salesperson knows the difference between features and benefits. So features are what something does, and benefits are what that means, if you like.
Yes.
I really like that Rackham made that extra distinction. He said there are things called features, then there are advantages, and then there are benefits. And he made the distinction between advantages and benefits. An advantage is what typically was called a benefit. So it's something like what a feature means, but it doesn't become a benefit until it's actually something that a customer or client cares about. So you can say that your car has a feature, and it may be having a feature of having self-locking doors. And so what's the benefit of that, or what's the advantage of that? So there might be some advantage to that, which is that you're safer. But if the customer doesn't care about safety, then there's no point listing 100 advantages that the customer cares about. What you really need to do is find the 1, 2, 3, or 5 that actually they care about, and those are the real benefits. And unless you're really talking about benefits at a sales level, at a marketing level, at a customer service level, even at a recruitment level, unless you're really talking about the benefits of working with us, or the benefits of us helping you this way, or the fact that we've got a Twitter account, if the customers don't use Twitter, it's not really a benefit. And I really think I think that's the point you're making, Ian, that it's not the difference that makes a difference is the only difference that matters.
And this is really tied in very much with leadership too, because I think one of my favourite definitions of leadership, I think, is the Latouche statement that says that leadership is about getting people to do what we want them to do, believing they did it themselves.
Yeah.
And this is very much, we want the customers to do what we want them to do, but we want them to believe that they did it themselves. It's very much it's aligned with the Zig Ziglar idea that the way we get what we want is to help other people get what they want.
Yeah, look, and I think that's right.
Yes.
And I reckon that some people who will look at that and say that's manipulative, because you're trying to trick people into believing that they want it all along. But I think the distinction is, and I know you don't believe that, Ian, because I think the distinction is that it's now so much more collaborative. And you started off by saying we need to be more collaborative, and I totally agree with that. And again, leadership is not bringing down the stone tablets from the mountain and telling people what to do.
No.
It's actually engaging people in creating a collaborative culture. And then when you say, people say we did it ourselves, it's natural. That's exactly what happens. So the leader stepping back and saying, you guys, like everyone here has incredible talent, incredible ability, incredible potential, and sometimes even actually incredible performance if we just let them do that. So if we take the lid off and let them do that, that's part of our leadership role.
And this is very much too about the stories that we tell ourselves, as well as the stories we tell other people about us. I know, Gihan, you're a great storyteller yourself, and you work with lots of speakers who are great storytellers. How much is our stories and storytelling, story sharing, how much are they a part of differentiation, do you think?
Yeah, you know what, Ian? I used to be skeptical about this.
Right,
so
okay.
That the whole idea of storytelling and the idea that you should tell more stories was something that I kind of got it, but I never really embraced it.
Right.
And what changed was that, like you hear people say, stories have been the way that people have passed down messages and culture throughout the centuries.
Yes.
And I always used to think, yeah, that's fine, but that was fine for our ancestors. But now what we need is something like more sharp, more direct. I'm not saying just facts and data and numbers. I'm not saying that, but I thought you need to be a lot sharper. And then suddenly what's happened is that stories, maybe this is just my justification for saying that I was wrong, but I've changed my mind, Ian. But I reckon suddenly stories have become more powerful than ever before. And for a couple of reasons. So one is, as we said, you can't just have a mission statement on the wall with these nouns that people don't understand the meaning of. So you say integrity, reliability, consistency. What does that mean? It means different things to different people.
Indeed.
And in an organization where you're saying, okay, let's leverage the power of the individuals, if I say trust is one of our key values, then everyone else has to know what that means, and everyone else has their own version of what trust means.
Yes.
And you're not going to instill that in people or get people to understand it or embrace it for themselves by just giving them the word trust. You tell stories of how we trusted a customer and they didn't let us down, or how we had an employee who came in late and because we trusted their judgment in making a decision, or how we let somebody loose on Twitter and they didn't betray our trust because they acted in ways that were consistent with that. So we tell stories of trust. And in these sort of more collaborative organizations where the structures are broken down, you can't rely on control and hierarchy anymore, stories are more important. So that's the first thing.
Yes.
The second thing is, because we've now got the ability to tell stories through videos and Facebook posts and photographs and podcasts, and like everyone's got the ability to tell stories, and everyone is telling stories. So that old idea of tribes passing down their culture through storytelling because they didn't have written language, that is now as current, or there's been a resurgence in that because everyone is telling stories that way. I can write a blog post or I can tweet about some event as it's happening. And the traditional storytellers and the media companies, they're dying to have people on the ground telling their stories. You see so many articles saying, if you know more about this, tweet. Or if you've got some photos, share them on our website. So storytelling has become the new currency for passing messages and for transmitting culture, vision, values. So I totally agree that stories are absolutely critical to differentiate and to be able to share our key messages.
And I think it's fascinating too that now that everyone has the ability to tell and share stories, then more and more we've got to tell such stories. I mean, I've always believed, again, as you know, I've been speaking professionally for a very long time, and I was fortunate enough that telling stories has always been my main modus operandi. But and nowadays, I've had a lot of those stories filmed, and my clients have access to them, whenever they want. But as I say to them, it's not my stories that are important. Rather, it's what you hear yourself say to yourself, and then take action. That's what's important. So the secret to a great story, in my view, is not so much the story, but how the story makes us feel. And it's
exactly.
You see Twitter posts, you see, Instagram, whatever, but a lot of it again is the same. And so what I'm keen to get your views on is, if everyone's doing this, how do we differentiate ourselves through this medium?
Yeah, so again, let's look at that example of let's say trust is one of your values,
yes,
and you want people in your organization to take that on as a value. So first of all, let's go back to what we said earlier, Ian. If trust is one of the values of your organization, it's something that as a group, as an organization, you've decided that's one of your values. So that's the first part. It's not something that has been dictated by above. So let's say we all agree that trust is one of our values. Then I reckon at a very practical level, Ian, as a leader or a manager at your team meetings, are you asking people, what does trust mean for you? Are you sharing a story that demonstrates what trust means to you as a leader? Are you asking your team members to tell you what trust means, and to share with the group, what does trust mean for you? For somebody, trust means my newborn baby has complete trust in me because she has no other way of surviving otherwise. And for somebody else, trust means in my relationship, I trust my partner implicitly and I don't have to keep checks on them. For somebody else, trust means something completely different. And if everyone has a story about trust and they're sharing those stories, that's how you build a culture. That's how you become the organization that becomes a trusted organization. And so I've looked at the internal side, but it applies externally as well. There's no reason why, when you have one of these stories, you can't record one of your employees telling one of those stories, share it on YouTube, and that becomes part of your external face to the world, because that is now something that people outside the organization are doing anyway. So why aren't you doing it? Why are we still living in this world where we believe that there are these barriers between inside the organization and outside the organization, and Marcoms can tell stories that are external and customer facing, but everybody else has to have the stories internal or vetted, or their social media policies that say, no, you can't publish anything without anyone's permission. No, that's not right. That's not right. The
Well,
idea is that, I mean, and I know, I mean, it's easy for us to rant about this, Ian, and I know there are some legal implications and you need to do things the right way. But I come back to, one of the things that drives me in is Steve Martin, Steve Martin, the actor. So this kind of
yes.
tells my age as well. But he's an actor who has longevity. And one of the things that he was asked was, what's your secret of success? And he said this: be so good they can't ignore you.
There you have it.
If I was, if you said to me, what's your business, your favorite business quote or something that you live by, it's that: be so good they can't ignore you. And if you start from that point, then all of those other issues about legal ramifications, about HR issues, as important as they are, they become less important because you go, okay, we're going to recruit the best people. We're going to give them best environment where they can thrive. We're going to do the absolute best that we can for our customers. So it doesn't matter what our competitors are doing, because we don't want to be focusing on our competitors. We want to be focusing on our customers and clients. So if you absolutely live by that principle, be so good they can't ignore you, then a lot of these other issues, they just dissolve. And again, I know it can sound like it's very theoretical and hypothetical, but organizations who live by that, whether they actually follow those words or not, organizations who live by that, they are absolutely the leading organizations in the world.
Look, I think you're absolutely right, and as you know, I'm big on let's remember that each and every one of us is remarkable just by the nature of our birth, and I think differentiation is about, we either do what other people aren't doing, which is very hard to do, mm-hmm. or we do what others are doing, we just do it better, uniquely, or more, or differently. And that in its essence is differentiation. And what you're saying is, if we are so good that people can't ignore us, then that in itself is the differentiator.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, coming back to, because we're talking about differentiation,
yes.
If you use it as a guiding principle, then that's your direction. And if you say, what do we need to do to be so good that your customers can't help but come to us, that employees can't help but stay with us and tell all their friends about us, that the market can't help but value our organization. If you use it as a guiding principle and say, okay, now what do we need to do? Then it doesn't need you and it doesn't need me to say, okay, here are the things you need to do in practice. You in your organization already have the intelligence, the savvy, the innovation, the creativity, the leadership to make that happen and to stand out, which is exactly what we're talking about.
Indeed, and I think that's just a fascinating way to probably bring our conversation to a conclusion for today, Gihan, because it doesn't get any better than that. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add? And how do people get in touch with you for perhaps you could help them to be so good they can't ignore them? That's what you do. Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
So to get in touch with me, it's gihanperera.com. So it's GIHANPERERA.com, or imatter.guru. So imatter.guru will also take you to my website, and there you can find out about what I do for speaking at conferences, what I do for mentoring. You can find out about my membership site, and you can find out about my service. I'd love you to get in touch, love to hear from you and connect with you. And I like to think, Ian, that I practice what I preach. So if you go to the website, you'll find a lot of valuable content as well. So sign up to my newsletter, sign up to my webinar series, watch my YouTube videos, and you get an idea of what I'm thinking about. And I think that's key nowadays. If you are, especially if you're an individual business owner, but even if you're working in an organization, you need to have your own profile. You need to have your own establish your own authority, completely separate from who you work for, and people will find out about you and do some research about you before they ever meet you face to face or even pick up the phone and call you. So I think that's really crucial for differentiation as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much. My special guest today has been Gihan Perera, and we've been talking about differentiation, and we've really come to the end with a fantastic quote from Steve Martin, which I think just encapsulates differentiation so well. And so, Gihan, thank you so much for sharing it, and that is, be so good that other people can't ignore you. This is Ian Berry. I look forward to seeing you next time.